What the founders of this country created for us was not a utopia. It was not a conclusion to a revolution that put us in a place where we could sit back in our bubbles and relax. What they created for us was a vision of perpetual revolution, of continual progress towards the ideal of liberty. Attainable or not, they didn't know. But they gave us the documents that set us on that course, and it's our fault for where we are today because we have so wavered from the principles that they laid out as the direction for this country. If they were looking down today, I think they would be appalled to see where we are as a country. But the vision is still there. It's right in front of us. All we have to do is embrace it the same way that they did.
In the American political system, there are two major parties. You've got the Democrats and, of course, the Republicans. So what happens when someone who doesn't belong to one of those two parties decides to run for office? Does he or she even stand a chance? Well, U.S. congressional candidate and former Marine Adam Kokesh, he's all too familiar with the struggle. He joins me today from Santa Fe, New Mexico, to discuss his campaign and also the controversy surrounding some of his political views. Hi there, Adam. So you are an anti-war Republican. Now, to some people, this may sound a little bit like an oxymoron. So how are you fighting that perception, or perhaps the stereotype, to say, hey, you know, it might say R next to my name, but I don't fit that mold that many Republicans do these days, especially when it comes to foreign policy?
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed part of your question there. You're breaking up a little bit here, but I think it's a greater oxymoron to be a pro-war Republican. If you're a real conservative, if the Republican Party is going to be, as Reagan called it, the party of big tent, smaller government, we should be looking for smaller government solutions to all of our problems. We have a problem in our foreign policy with terrorism. We have a real threat to this country, and yet we have created a very big government solution in terms of occupying the countries of Iraq and Afghanistan with hundreds of thousands of troops in a way that costs us an incredible amount of money and is doing exactly what Osama bin Laden wants us to do with our foreign policy, namely invest a lot of resources in feudal occupations and have this country bled dry, and that's what's happening. So, if anything, I think that's the great contradiction within the Republican Party right now, within modern American conservatism. If anything, we're finding that this message of a true, consistent conservatism, of finding a small government solution for most of the problems that we expect our government to take on, actually resonates much better with the base of the Republican Party, with the leadership, because it's much more consistent philosophically. And I think the American people are looking for a new message right now when they see that really both parties are pro-war parties right now, both major parties at least.
Well, speaking of the Republican Party, it seems like there are battles forming within the GOP itself, different groups here. You have the Tea Partiers, you have Liberty candidates, you have Neoconservatives. So who's really in charge here?
Well, that's a good question, and it is definitely a coalition of people who hold a variety of philosophical beliefs. But if anybody does not belong in the Republican Party, it's the neoconservatives, who represent nothing new and nothing conservative. They represent a big government nationalist philosophy that we saw all too much play out during the Bush administration. Now, Bush himself was not a neoconservative, but a lot of the people around him were, and we saw a growth of government under the Bush administration that we've seen consistently throughout the 20th century, that government continues to grow, liberty continues to shrink, and the coalition standing up against that now is being manifest through the Republican Party, and people are coming together to make sure that we have electoral victories in November 2010, where we send people to Washington who represent true, principled, small government philosophies. We have paleocons, utilitarians, principled small government conservatives, but really, if anybody does not have a place in the coalition of big tent, smaller government, it's the neoconservatives. And I think we saw the rejection of that in this last election cycle, and as big government Republicans, there's a real reaction away from that, and now the base of the Republican Party is very wary of people like that as leaders of this party, saying, we don't want people like that representing us anymore. And so they're much more inclined to support true liberty candidates, constitutional candidates, and real conservatives who are consistent and principled in our approach to all of the issues.
So perhaps you feel right now that your time has come. Very briefly, Adam, some polling indicates that you do have a shot to win the seat that's currently held by a Democrat. But first, of course, you have to get the Republican nomination. And for you and other Liberty candidates, this could be a real problem. Why is that, even in your own party?
Yeah, well, there is a problem right now because the neoconservatives that took so much power under the party, under the Bush administration, still have a strong grasp on a lot of the party mechanisms. And so we're not very popular with the party leadership. We're much more popular with the party base. And we're seeing that kind of pushback and that kind of resistance to change from within the establishment. But the base is ready for a new message, and they're ready to send people to Washington with a little more philosophical consistency. So that there is that dilemma there. There is that pushback against true liberty candidates. And you know, like I've been saying out here on the trail, there's a big problem with having a consistently constitutional platform. There's no money in it for anybody. There's no special favors to be granted when you have a real constitutional government and real constitutional policy. So there aren't a lot of special interests lining up to get behind this campaign. There aren't a lot of industries that have an interest in supporting my candidacy. But we do have an incredible grassroots support. Just today, you can see I'm not in my office. I'm outside in the beautiful Rio Rancho area, actually, and I'm out with people knocking on doors, and the people that we're talking to are really receptive of this message.
And Adam, we will certainly continue to follow your campaign. Congressional candidate Adam Kokesh there for us, Santa Fe, New Mexico.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper.
Civil rights were won in this country not by any legislator, but by a movement.
But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
I have great hope for America, but it comes not from any election. No, my hope comes from you. We are driving off the edge of a cliff, and our government is slamming down on the accelerator. I will die knowing that I gave everything I had to create a freer, more peaceful world of abundance for my children.
So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man.
The utmost manifestation of love and devotion to America is today, as it always has been, resistance of tyranny. Wolverines! So I have to ask, is it time? Is it time? Is it time? The first American Revolution was a whisper that grew to a gale force, a spark that became a raging fire, an idea that ended a tyranny. This revolution is a shift to a new paradigm. It is a shift away from government and towards community, a shift away from authority and towards freedom. It is a shift away from fear and towards love. The most dangerous people in the world today are those of you who think for yourselves. To be a champion of the U.S. Constitution will have you denounced as a radical, because to live these ideals will make you nothing less than a revolutionary.
I will defend every word of it. That's what I believe.